لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. كيف حالكم؟ Alhamdulillah. My beloved brothers and sisters, respected mothers and fathers, honorable youth, children, viewers and listeners, Alhamdulillah, in our fiqh, our fifth lesson this evening, we are, of course, Alhamdulillah, in Kitab al-Salah, and this evening I start a very, very important section. We look at the conditions of Surah Fatiha, the shurut of Surah Fatiha. Now this is absolutely critical. You cannot find a believer, a Muslim, performing their ibadah, their salah, and they are unaware of the laws of Surah Fatiha. Because Surah Fatiha, as we are looking at this evening, we are going into specifically the shurut, the conditions that make it valid in your salah. And this surah, its recitation, is not optional. It has to be there and it has to be perfected. So inshallah, we're going to look at what the Shaykh has written around the conditions of Surah Fatiha. And so the Shaykh writes, Shurutul Fatiha Ashara, that there are 10 conditions of Surah Fatiha. There are 10 that need to be met. I won't go through all of them. I want to afford this justice, inshallah. So we're just going to talk about the first 5 this evening, inshallah. So the first, I'll mention what the Shaykh has written. أولا الترتيب. ثانيا والموالاة. ثالثا ومراعاة حروفها. ورابعا ومراعاة تشديداتها. وخامسا وأن لا يسكت سكتة طويلة ولا قصيرة يقصد بها قطع القراءة. So the Shaykh has written, there are 10 conditions, but I'm just listing 5 this evening. The first, now this is very important, because when you are reciting Surah Fatiha, and also when you are following an Imam, a mistake that would take away from the conditions must be corrected. If a mistake is made in Surah Fatiha, whether you are making it on your own, or you are following an Imam, and a mistake is made that goes against these conditions, it must be corrected for the validity of that salah. So the first one, at-tartib, that the verses of Surah Fatiha must be recited in its order. So let's say you make a mistake in Surah Fatiha. If you are able to accurately determine at that stage where your mistake was made, you are reciting Surah Fatiha, and perhaps you made a mistake, tongue, you realize there's something wrong in my recitation, then it is better for you to begin Surah Fatiha from the beginning because of the importance of the surah. And hence you find if an imam is performing the salah and maybe something happened and they make a mistake, they often go back to the beginning to perfect the recitation of Surah Fatiha. Very different to perhaps reading the surah or the ayat after Surah Fatiha, because that recitation is sunnah. But Surah Fatiha, it must have its tartib. Secondly, there must be continuity. So Surah Fatiha must not be interrupted. The only interruption which is permitted is the correction of the Imam. So if the Imam is reciting and maybe he missed an ayah, then of course it is wajib, those eligible, those closest to the Imam, to correct the Imam. And while we've discussed fiqh of correction of the Imam previously, but those closer must correct. You can imagine if the entire Masjid Taqwa corrected the Imam Surah Fatiha, because everyone knows the surah. So those closer, they held the greater amana to correct the Imam, to remind the Imam of what error had been made. And in most cases, the Imam will begin from the beginning of Surah Fatiha, because the surah must be in place. But other than that, there must be continuity in its recitation. Similarly, and we know that the madahib differ regarding the repetition of Surah Fatiha. That Surah Fatiha, as we have in the Shafi'i madhab, that a Shafi'i must recite Surah Fatiha after the Imam had recited. So I was just also observing tonight mashallah, Mulana Rushdi, when he read Surah Fatiha, was examining, Mulana gave a nice time, beautiful time, for actually a relaxed recitation of Surah Fatiha, which is good, because sometimes we panic that the Imam we know his style, he might start the qira'ah very quickly, and then we have a hastened pace because we want to read our surah. So alhamdulillah, if you are accustomed to the Imam leading and you find that the Imam has a break, then you know alhamdulillah. So now we know if Mulana Rushdi is standing in front, there's going to be ample time for you to repeat your surah Fatiha. And there shouldn't really be a break in between. That is with regards to continuity. The third condition is that you must perfect the pronunciation of the huruf, the letters of Surah Fatiha. If there is one surah that you must not take for granted, it is your Surah Fatiha. Now, sometimes we learn Surah Fatiha at the age of 3, 4, 5. And then we go to madrasa, and alhamdulillah, our makatib, our maktabas, and our madrasas, our madaris, they really refine the Surah Fatiha. So it's very important, we have the same policy at Masjid Taqwa, that the Surah Fatiha's pronunciation must be perfected, because it's a condition that the letters are pronounced correctly. And so someone posed a very interesting question to me a few months ago. They said they traveled and they went to a masjid and the Imam pronounced certain letters differently. For example, the ha became a ha, which is common. The dad became a za, wala zalim. And so the person said, what is the fatwa on the recitation of that Surah Fatiha? So if we, of course, not passing fatwa on any other masjid or city around the world, but in accordance with the teachings of the Shafi'i madhab, the letters must be perfected in Surah Fatiha. So when you are in control of your salah, you must perfect the pronunciation of the letters. And of course, the Arabic letters are not easy. The Ain, the Ha, the Dad are not easy letters. You have to, practice them. So inshallah, let it be good practice for you. And mashallah, when you hear a qari or someone reciting, I know that there are many seniors in this masjid. The Hufad have told me sometimes a senior comes to them and say, can I just recite my Surah Fatiha to you? And so that you can correct it. That's a beautiful act, and they would come to me saying, Sheikh, this person came and said that I must help them with the Surah Fatiha. And I said, that is noble because they don't want to leave this world repeating an error. So may Allah guide us to the correct pronunciation of the huruf. The fourth, the tashdeeds, the shaddas of Surah Fatiha must be in place. I will talk about that more next week. And then the last one for tonight is that you must not have a pause in between Surah Fatiha. So there shouldn't be a lengthy pause, whether short, whether long. That should not exist in the Surah Fatiha. In particular, with an intention that you're going to end it, you cannot do that to Surah Fatiha. There must be continuation. So just for tonight, alhamdulillah, these are the 5. We will continue next week again, inshallah. And then just some conclusions for tonight. Know that your Surah Fatiha has 10 conditions. And secondly, the pronunciation of the huruf are critical. So if you get an opportunity, a hafid, you have an opportunity to an imam, with an imam, then you can recite your Surah Fatiha. Previously, tradition in our community was they would recite to the khalifas, and irrespective of age, beautiful tradition, just to refine the pronunciation of Surah Fatiha because of how important the surah is. So inshallah, we close on that, and we will continue with the shurut, the conditions of Surah Fatiha next week, inshallah. Any questions about tonight? جزاك الله خيرا وصلى الله وسلم عليه والحمد لله رب العالمين.